Hello and welcome to episode number 332 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show, we discover there's talk of Qantas international services being grounded until July 2021. Wizz Air decides to take on EasyJet at Gatwick Airport, and a man is arrested after driving under a taxiing aircraft. In the military this week, the Royal Air Force receives a high-end full motion simulator for its P-8 Poseidon, and which is built in the US and transported to the UK by a Russian-made aeroplane. And we see even more flights of the legendary and not so retired F-117 Nighthawk in support of an exercise in Nevada. The Microsoft Flight Sim is finally released, and producer John has been having a damn good go on that game this week. And Matt talks to Captain Al and Dan Holley about Turbulence in this week's Plain Truth. So joining me over in the PTUK main master, big establishment studio is, of course, Matt Smith.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm in trouble already. I see HR have been in touch. We've started 90 seconds late, and he's furious.
Oh, boy.
I know, absolutely. It really won't do. Anyway, yes, I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's been a really, really busy week this week. I think things are really starting to pick up incredibly within our business that we have, so it's all good. Plenty of stuff happening on the roads, which is good. Just a quick note as well, big happy birthday to a very good friend of mine, Mark, who's celebrating his birthday today. So happy birthday to you, Mark. Hope you'll be having a
21
great day.
plus VAT, right? Yeah.
He's the same age as me. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Oh,
And so you can probably guess that Nev, unfortunately, can't be with us this week. Unfortunately, Nev is doing another round trip of Europe, tasting all the finest wines. Oh. But and also Armando can't join us this week as well, because Armando is apparently flying members of the heads of state around in his private jet. So yeah, Armando can't join us either tonight. But we do have probably the greatest sub come joining us, who's taking over from the two hosts that we're missing this week. And he makes up for two hosts, let's be honest, because he is the man, the legend, the one we all love. It is Captain Jeff.
Hello. Wait, I don't hear the sound effect. Here, let me go ahead and play it for you then. All right. Hello. Welcome. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show.
Hey, Jeff. How's things with you, Jeff? Have you started that all-important 717 training yet?
Nope.
No.
Still waiting to hear official word and when I'm going to start training. As far as I know, it's going to be in October. And I did notice in my electronic flight bag, the manual section automatically started getting filled up with 717 manuals, so maybe it's time for me to start looking at those and start some studying.
All right, I think Jeff, perhaps you need to get in contact with our producer John in regards to Microsoft Flight Sim. Perhaps you could.
Oh yeah, you might be able to tell me a thing or two about 717.
Yeah, I'm quite sure not. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a busy week with aviation this week, I think, hasn't it, Matt? There's been quite a few things going on within the industry.
Really? Oh, you had a different week to me then. we were scrubbing around for stories late last night, so I don't know what you're on.
Actually, this week in the UK, we've had a certain series appearing on ITV, which is one of our
I see. Sorry,
TV
it was a segue into that. I do apologise.
In the UK. And this week we've had it's the first actually we had, didn't we, Matt, of a 12-part series on Heathrow, which is busiest airport, Britain's busiest airport.
I know Nev has actually seen it, unfortunately, because he was going to give us a review of it this evening. But have you? I know you've got it in your planner. Have you had a chance to give it a watch yet?
Do you know? I haven't had a chance to see it, but I did read a few reviews on
they weren't
an
glowing,
aviation
were they?
forum that I'm in, and they weren't. How do I put this? the visuals are lovely. It was filmed in HD.
Right. Okay. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. If anybody in the chat room has actually watched the series, so I think it was on ITV, wasn't it?
ITV, yeah.
Thursday
On
ITV,
Thursday.
called Britain's Busiest Airport. If anybody has seen it in the chat room, we'd be grateful for what you thought of it, as I say, because unfortunately Nev's not able to join us tonight. But and this one of the things that is so frustrating about this, and I don't know whether you have this similar problem in the States, Jeff, but whenever they sort of try and depict airports, and especially when it comes to like documentaries and stuff, somehow they just never seem to. It seems to be sort of filmed by people who don't understand it. Do you know what I mean?
They're always very accurate, in my opinion.
Right.
It's exactly the way everything happens, for sure.
Right. Okay.
No. Sarcasm.
Yes. Okay. Well, we'll clearly gloss over that. Oh, hello. Somebody's received
Someone's
a very
got
loud
notification
email.
somewhere.
Yeah.
But
That wasn't me. I don't know what that sound is.
Not me.
That appears
Not
to come
guilty.
from here. I
Not
don't
guilty.
know where that came from. What
So,
happened there?
Never heard that sound before.
No.
I know you guys think it's me with my soundboard, but I have not touched a thing.
Okay. Somebody received an email.
That's what she said.
Right. Yes. I don't know what happened there.
Anyway,
thank you, Simon Hawkes, for your email.
Now we know.
Right. Anyway. Okay. I don't.
Anyway,
even know,
moving on.
I don't even know how that happened. Sorry. Nothing's plugged in.
Hello.
Well, it's like it's this protocol that people send mail electronically.
Right. Okay.
And-
It was what? So they write it with a pen and then what?
No,
sort of
with a keyboard, and then they
Keyboard,
hit
you say?
send. Yeah.
send?
Somebody,
No.
John, would you please explain to Matt how that whole thing works?
Okay. Well, while we're moving on to the John says it's far too complicated for him. While we're moving on from that, then Carlos, you better dig us out of this hole.
Yes, thanks to everyone who's joined us in the YouTube chat room this evening. All the usual family members in there tonight. Liz Piper, hello to Auntie Liz. Lane Street, Richard Adams. We've got Masha in there. We've also got Neville Bounds in there. He's keeping an eye on things. Tanya W. We've got in there. Graham Haley. Hello to you, Graham. Hope everything is well with you. Stephen Howland. Hello to you. Jonathan Warner. He must be taking a night off, or either that or he's starting a late shift. We've got John Jester. Hello to you, John. Just scrolling down. Paul Tricker. Hello to you, Paul. One of our local listeners, not too far from me and Matt. Stephen Ivey is also in the chat room as well. So hello to you, Stephen. And to anyone who is maybe listening to the show as an audio podcast, remember to take yourselves over to YouTube, search for Plain Talking UK, and if you do find us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and also the bell icon, which is right next to it, to be notified when we go live, when Matt presses that all-important button on the touch screen.
Ooh,
and then you
power.
can join us in the chat room, like we've got so many in there tonight joining us in the chat room. So you can join us in there and, talk aviation.
Absolutely, it's all part of it. You'll be delighted to know I found where that noise came from. It came back from the talkback system, so it was only us that heard it. Ironically, there we are. Never mind. Nobody cares. Why am I even going on about it? Right. Okay. Now we're hoping that somebody is going to drop in. So apologies if the commercial news gets interrupted, but we're hoping that we've got a little bit of a live video feed coming in very soon. But
hopefully we've. I've just had a quick message from our main man Micah, who's hoping to dial in. He's gonna try and attempt to dial in at some point very soon.
Okay.
I think via Zoom.
Right. Well, shall we? I'll tell you what we'll do. Shall we bash on with the commercial news for now, and then we'll interrupt the commercial news for some live breaking news, shall we? From the field, as it were.
So we are going to start the show then, as we do each week, with our rundown of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So if everyone's ready,
oh yeah.
Let's go. So kicking off this week's first news story, this is on the AINonline.com website, and this is especially for Steve and Grant over in Australia. So Qantas sees international service grounded until July 2021. Qantas expects the majority of its international capacity to remain grounded until the middle of next year, as the airline grapples with the persisting border restrictions and quarantine requirements due to COVID-19. We'll take a drink.
Oh.
Qantas Group CEO Alan Joyce said during the company's year-end earnings webcast for fiscal year 2020, and the projection came as the company reported a $4 billion Australian dollar or $2.9 billion drop in revenue during the second half of its fiscal year, ending on the 30th of June, and a $2.7 billion loss before tax for the entire year, due mostly to a $1.4 billion non-cash write-off asset, including the A380 fleet and the 642 million Australian dollars in a one-off redundancy costs as part of restructuring the business for recovery. Still, the company managed to register an underlying profit for the fiscal year of 124 million Australian dollars, amounting to a 91% decline from the previous year. International destinations are still unlikely to open until July 2021, with a possibility of an earlier restart for the Trans-Tasman route, said Joyce, who called the conditions in the second half of fiscal year 20 the toughest the carrier has faced in its 100-year history. Recovery will take time and it will be choppy, he added, and we've always had setbacks with borders opening and then closing again, but we know that travel is at the top of people's wish lists and that demand will return as soon as restrictions lift. That means we can get more of our people back to work, he said. Qantas has cut 6,000 employees, or around 20% of their workforce, since the onset of COVID-19 crisis, and expects to stand down 20,000 more until work returns. Ow, that's not nice. Joyce said the fiscal year 20 results showed how the COVID-19 crisis had, take a drink again, derailed what would have been a strong financial performance. He said that we were on track for another profit above $1 billion when the crisis struck, he explained. The fact that we still delivered a full year underlying profit shows how quickly we adjusted when the revenue collapsed. Ooh, yeah, I remember speaking to Grant. I know you spoke to Stephen Grant not so long back, and I remember Grant saying how incredibly stringent the restrictions are on those guys over in Australia.
But then I think a lot of it also is the fact that, I mean, I genuinely, until I spoke to Stephen Grant, because for some reason we aren't sort of hearing much about the actual, what I call like the count, for want of a better word. And certainly where those guys are, they were saying that, you know, actually the case numbers are climbing rapidly. It's I mean, it's not a happy situation really there. But I mean, presumably, I mean, obviously this is not great news. They've made a decision, if you like, to sort of postpone until flying again next year. I mean, Jeff, I mean, in the States, is sort of international flying still happening, or do you think a lot of airlines will be doing something similar?
Sure, why wouldn't it be? Is there something going on?
COVID-19.
Say it. What is it?
COVID-19, apparently.
Thank you.
Yeah, that word. I don't know. It's a funny one, isn't it? I mean, I understand why they've done it. They've made the decision that's, you know, what they're talking about making that as the decision that what they want to do. But I don't know. It sort of makes me feel quite sad, to be honest.
Yeah, it's going to take a while for all of that to recover. And sadly, international travel is going to be one of the last things that really gets back to the way it was pre-pandemic.
Shame. I'll be glad when things get back to some sort of relative normality.
Yes. Well, of course, obviously, what with Malta and things, obviously, because you were supposed to be going out to Malta sort of in a few
and
weeks'
the US,
time, weren't you? And the US, obviously, and that's all been pulled as a result of that. But have you had your money back, by the way, yet from?
Well, update on that actually. Even though we already knew months ago that they were going to, EasyJet were going to cancel our flight because it was obvious.
Right.
We did actually finally get an email, and which was the refund process email. Click on the Connect Guard tab, fill in your name, fill in the booking number, blah, blah, blah. And they are going to take a minimum of 28 days to pay the money back into my bank.
It could be a lot worse, though, to be fair. I mean, a lot of airlines are trying to sort of... Because I suppose this is the problem, and I know we've covered this before as well, but it's like... I don't know. My gut reaction, if I was able to afford it, would be to sort of actually just leave it in the airline, because I don't know if this is helping everyone. Everybody's withdrawing all of their money.
That is one of the things that we looked at. They offered us a voucher. They offered us a lot of extras, little sort of taster sort of extras and stuff, if we carried on with it. But the trouble is, Matt, is that for I think for most people, is the uncertainty to when things will get back to normal. Yeah. So you could be sitting on this voucher for the next 12 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, 12 months.
I don't know. I know there's no easy answer to it, is it really? But it's also, it's probably just worth mentioning as well that there's interesting that the Dubai state carrier Emirates Airline has said it will serve 100% of its 143 destinations by the summer of 2021, with the frequency of flights depending on demand, according to Chief Operating Officer Adel Al-Rekha. I mean, interesting that that they're sort of taking another look at it, taking a different viewpoint, if you like, where they're planning to operate 100% of their schedule, perhaps not the frequency that they do now. But I don't know, are they being overly cautious, Qantas, perhaps?
Yeah, I think with that, with the loss and stuff, I think most airlines are trying to be cautious, especially when it comes to money. To be fair, to give it to a lot of the airlines, quite a few of the airlines that I've read about online are trying their best to keep staff on board. Yeah, I mean, presumably it'll go back to normal at some point, one would hope. But I very much hope so. Yeah, absolutely. But moving on to the next story, Matt, and Ryanair are cutting as well. Yeah, well, I suppose this is the thing, isn't it? We've certainly here, if you're living in the UK, there's been lots of stories about people countries that have been added to the ban list, if you like, where you have to quarantine when you come home, obviously, and that Malta being one of them. Well, yes, indeed, that will obviously have an impact on the airlines. And so this is Ryanair. This is flightglobal.com, and the headline is Ryanair cuts 20% of September and October capacity as restrictions hit demand. Low-cost carrier Ryanair has reduced its planned capacity for September and October by 20% as demand for intra-European travel weakens amid government-imposed restrictions, citing the impact of continuing uncertainty over recent COVID case rises in some EU countries. The pan-European airline says that the cuts will be achieved through frequency reductions rather than route closures. These capacity cuts and frequency reductions for the months of September and October are necessary given the recent weakness in forward bookings due to the COVID restrictions in a number of EU countries, Ryanair states. It highlights restrictions imposed by a number of European countries in the past 2 weeks, which mean bookings, especially for business travel in September and October, have been negatively affected. Ryanair would therefore reduce frequency so that we can tailor our capacity to demand over the next 2 months. The restrictions will be heavily focused on countries such as Spain, France and Sweden, where coronavirus case rates have led to increased travel restrictions, it states. The carrier laments a uniquely restrictive green list of destinations in its Irish home market, where capacity cuts will also be made. Ryanair believes that proper testing at airports and effective tracing is the only realistic and proportionate method of supervising safe intra-EU air travel while effectively limiting the spread of the COVID-19 virus. The island-based carrier said in early August that it had carried 4.4 million passengers in July as it partially restored its network. That figure was 70% down on the same figure of 2019 and was achieved with capacity at around 40% of the 2019 level. It projected that its August capacity would be around 60% of the 2019 level. Ryanair's move to cut capacity chimes with IATA's decision to revise downwards its projection for
European travel passenger numbers this year. The Airline Industry Association said on the 13th of August that it now expects passenger numbers to decline by around 60% in 2020. I mean, I can't say I'm surprised, obviously, because it's been sort of a funny couple of weeks, isn't it? I think Croatia, for example, is now being added to the ban list as of 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, I think, certainly here in the UK. So, yeah, it's just, I don't know. Do you know what? I'm getting really bored. I want 2020 to just go away now.
I'll tell you what, Matt.
Start again. Somebody press the reset button. That's what happens with the computer, isn't it? You power down, reset, and try again.
That figure of 4.4 million passengers in July, I was quite shocked at that, actually. I didn't realise that. I know it's a lot less than it normally would be.
Yeah, absolutely.
But still, 4.4 million, it's not a small amount of passengers. But
I mean, what are load factors like in the States, Jeff, at the moment? I mean, I presume, obviously, are we talking sort of similar reductions of 50 and 60%?
Yeah, very large reductions. Although, to be honest, since May 27th, I haven't been to an airport, so I don't know what it's like. I've been home all this time, so I haven't really been able to tell what the loads are. But I think they're picking up, but they're nowhere near the same levels that they were this time last year. So I believe that Acme is probably I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there, but under 30% of what we were doing the previous year, probably much less than that.
Because, I mean, obviously in the States, in comparison so much here, because obviously most of the stuff here is leaving the UK, but obviously in the States there's a lot of what I call sort of interstate transport, isn't there? And I guess that's potentially impacted less maybe than international routes?
Yes, the domestic travel has been impacted less, but it's still been pretty dramatically impacted.
I'm guessing though, Jeff, with you're not flying since May. I'm guessing that you have an incredibly clean car and a finely manicured garden.
Yeah, I have people that do all that for me, and they're doing a bang-up job.
Yeah, absolutely. You're watching it from watching them work from the hammock. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I had to mow my lawn for a couple of weeks because I know the horror. Reek. The guy that runs the lawn service had COVID.
Wait, blimey.
Drink.
Right.
Drink.
Sorry. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did have to go out there and fire up the lawnmower that I hadn't used since 2016.
My goodness!
And actually do the job myself, which I had for many years of my life. And but it was just a couple of weeks, and then he was back at it again. So,
phew, thank goodness for that. A speedy recovery, at least. Actually, Stephen Ivy's just saying in the chat room there that Acme Junior is doing 50% of our schedule from last year.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's quite that is still quite a drop, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
but I guess it can't be.
But 50%. That's what we always shoot for on the APG. That's a score there, Stephen.
Well, quite absolutely.
So Jeff, I'll say, Jeff, the next story for you, Jeff. I think that whoever this guy was must have had a very poorly designed TomTom sat-nav or a Garmin sat-nav.
Obviously, it wasn't his fault. So you're referring to this article from, let's see, where's it? Simple Flying, which is the way I like it, because the simpler the better for me. Man arrested in Portland after driving under a taxiing aircraft. A man has been arrested again in Portland, Oregon, after he drove his family onto an active taxiway. He wanted everybody in the family to experience this under a moving aircraft.
Did they all get arrested? That's the question.
I don't know. Well, let's read the article and find out.
Okay, shut up, Smith. Sorry.
The incident, which occurred on Sunday, was swiftly resolved by county police with the perpetrator incurring criminal charges. Here's what happened. And now to you at Portland Airport International. Oh, thanks, Jeff. First of all, I'll tell you the Portland International Airport is the largest airport in the state of Oregon, United States, presents the perfect opportunity for a getaway. I think that must be an ad. Let's continue. The incident happened on Sunday, 16 August, just after 1937 local time. That's 7:37 p.m. for normal people. Let's see, and involved a family of 4 in their sedan. According to reports, a vehicle crashed through gates at the north side of Portland Airport after coming off a nearby road. I think it was one of those big giant station wagons, like, what was it, National Lampoon's?
Chevy Chase, yeah.
Yeah, Chevy Chase, I think. That's what I'm picturing in my mind.
Yeah, we'll go with
let's
that.
see. It's a sedan, though. Yeah. An employee from the airport promptly drew attention to the car and asked it to stop. The driver, a father with his wife and 2 young children, obliged. The airport called police to the scene, and the culprit initially cooperated with their inquiry. It's unclear. Let's see. The driver of the vehicle told police that he had been left without options after being chased by several trucks on the highway. Okay. Portland Airport was his only opportunity to escape. Wow. However, after speaking with police officers, the 24-year-old, who was named as Ulysses Tayada Ayala, thank you very much for that, returned to his vehicle and drove off with one of his children. On his escape, he headed straight underneath a moving aircraft that was taxiing to the runway. So apparently he took off with one of his children, obviously his favorite. Thankfully, the sharp wit of the pilot meant that no one was harmed. This is the first I hear about a pilot anywhere. Did I miss something? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the aircraft stopped while the sedan carried on, coming to a rest at Portland Airport's E gates, according to a report shared with Simple Flying, a police statement said. Near the area of gate E8, the vehicle once again stopped on the ramp, and the driver hung his body and hands outside of the window. The occupants of the vehicle were detained, and the vehicle was secured and later removed from the airfield. Police arrested the driver. Nothing said about his family, so they must have just been along for the ride. Placed him in Multnomah County Jail. I'm not sure if that's pronounced correctly or not, but I give it my best shot. He was charged with 3 felonies: criminal mischief, attempt to elude, and assaulting a police officer.
I mean, there's a lot of questions here. It's like, how on earth do you get... How on earth did he end up on, like, airside in the first place? That's the alarm bells that are ringing in my head. Yeah, absolutely. So many questions there.
I'm just watching the video that someone posted on Twitter of this guy being arrested on the apron, if you want to call it. And the police were definitely really interested in getting this guy on the floor.
Should we go with efficient?
Yes.
Did he fall down?
He did. He took a little tumble, I think.
Oh,
did he?
Yes.
That's a shame.
Good.
Yeah.
It's an outrageous statement by me. Oh dear, never mind. It's yes, not a lot of aviation in there, but as I say, there's lots of alarm bells ringing there. It's like, how on earth did they get there in the first place? Yes. So Richard Adams is saying that bet the parking fee was extremely painful, and Lane Street is saying that was the car charged a gate fee, which is another good question, really. For goodness sake, honestly.
Bunch of comedians there.
I know, they're much funnier than we are, let's be honest. But there we go. Right, okay, we should probably move on to the next story. Thanks for that, Jeff.
Sure.
So the next story is on the AINonline.com website. And thank you, John. China presses ahead with airport infrastructure boom. So, as airports across the globe continue to face unprecedented revenue pressures following a near collapse in air connectivity, China continues to buck the trend with a surge of new airport development projects across the mainland. The country completed and put into service 12 new airports, really, since work on them resumed in March. The Civil Aviation Administration of China, or the CAAC, said in a press briefing on Thursday. Officials expect the 13th airport, Ankang Fungang Airport in Shenyi province, to open in October, while construction of Wulong Yangsha Airport in southwest China's Qingying municipality nears completion. Meanwhile, the enlarged Zhangjiao Ningguang Airport reopened on August the 3rd. God, I'm bossing this. Considered one of the key supporting airports for the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, the airport boasts a new terminal apron, which in the extended runway, and can now accommodate up to 1 million passengers a year from 600,000 previously. In the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, China's airport construction binge might seem overly ambitious. However, expanding and modernizing critical infrastructures at breakneck speed serves a larger purpose, namely the development of local economies, particularly in low-income areas. Since late March, work on more than 30 major airport projects has resumed, including at China's fourth largest international hub, Chengdu Taifu. Yes, that as well. Chengdu Taifu International Airport, which developers expect to finish next year, according to the CAAC. Continuing to expand air transportation services in poverty-stricken areas remains a key ambition as China enters the home stretch of its 13 five-year plan, which runs through 2020. The CAAC will continue to deepen the implementation of various tasks for poverty alleviation in 2020 to ensure the completion and commissioning of new airports such as Wulong and the start of construction on new airports such as Shuzhou, as the focus of poverty alleviation work within the industry, said Bao Yi, Deputy Director of the CAAC's Development Department. While China, while China banks on its domestic travel to spur economic growth, the country also cautiously introduced regular international services to 50 countries by August the 12th, which I must say is a brilliant date. 19 Chinese carriers and 74 foreign operators were carrying out 210 domestic round trips along 187 international routes on a weekly basis. However, the CAAC has moved to temporarily suspend Changi Shanghai Etihad Airways flights from Abu Dhabi. I have flown into Abu Dhabi before, thank you, to Changi. China Eastern Airlines flights from Manila to Shanghai, and Sri Lanka Airlines flights from Colombo to Shanghai for a period of 4 weeks, starting in August the 17th after passengers tested for COVID-19.
No, and I think the only way that I can sort of get us out of that basically is that if you enjoyed the pronunciations of that particular story, then please do send us an email to iamterriblyoffended@planetalkinguk.com. That's probably the answer.
/ APG.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is the well, you look like you really enjoyed that one there. And Paul Tricker was really impressed as well. Can we just go back? Can we just go back to the story? Let's just put this in a perspective. Really?
12 new airports since work resumed on them in March.
True.
These guys can literally turn like a pile of soil into an airport in like 10 minutes. Whereas it's taken us in the UK like 6,000 years to even think about having an extra runway at Heathrow.
Oh, steady.
Just saying. I'm just saying.
Good point.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, don't get me started on the Crossrail project either. That's another can of worms open.
Blimey.
But, okay, well,
thanks for that, John.
We all enjoyed that story. Thanks. Yeah, I was supposed to have that one, but I chickened out. That's the joys of being involved in the planning process, isn't it? Never mind. There we go. Shall we move on?
So moving on to the next story, which Matt is going to read, and he's going to have a whiz on this story.
Right, indeed. This is on the independent.co. The independent.co.uk website, and the headline is Wizz Air takes on EasyJet at Gatwick Airport. Gatwick Airport, which has been the hardest hit of all the major UK hubs, could once again become a battleground for European air travel. Wizz Air is to open a base at the Sussex Airport with links to Athens, Lanzarote, Malta and Naples. It has been granted sufficient slots to make a one aircraft operation viable. That's interesting. The Hungarian carrier's UK subsidiary, which will base an Airbus A321 at Gatwick will, with flights beginning on the 22nd of October in time for the autumn half term. Wizz Air UK says the move will create more than 40 jobs directly and around 3 times as many indirectly. Owen Jones, who is the managing director, said today's announcement of our new Gatwick base and 4 new routes reinforces Wizz Air UK's position as a British airline that is growing, creating new jobs, bringing much needed connectivity to the UK, and so helping the economy get back in the air. Spain and Malta are currently on the UK's no-go list, with returning passengers facing 2 weeks in quarantine. EasyJet, which is by far the largest operator at Gatwick, is likely to respond. It has more than 70 aircraft based at the airport. Gatwick has seen Virgin Atlantic close its base where the airline started. British Airways move many services to Heathrow, and EasyJet downsizing operations significantly too. In addition, the low-cost airline Norwegian has suspended operations at the Sussex hub. The airport's chief executive Stuart Wingate said this is encouraging news for Gatwick, particularly at a time when the industry has been so negatively impacted by the virus. Having new aircraft based at Gatwick underpins the resilience of our business for long term and ensures we continue to offer our passengers great choice. This is a welcome indication of the positive conversations we've been having with airlines, both existing and new, about securing Gatwick's future. Wizz Air has also announced a 1 aircraft base at Doncaster in Sheffield Doncaster, Sheffield, sorry, that's one airport. It's a bit like London Luton, isn't it? Serving Alicante, Malaga, Larnaca, Faro, Lublin, Kossis, and I can't pronounce the last one, so anyway. Yeah, I know. I want to say Sasiva, but I'll probably get shouted at in my ear in a moment. So, but it's good news, really. So what? That seems like an awful lot of routes for people to be running with 1 aircraft, though. No, okay, excellent.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, just going to be basing. If I've read that correctly, they're going to be basing 1 aircraft at Gatwick, and they're going to, sort of doing several routes. But well, hey, I suppose,
well, there'll be a very busy crew.
Well, yeah, there is that. It's probably multiple crews, to be fair. But yeah, good news for Gatwick though, because as I say, they have been sort of hit quite hard, haven't they? By that, especially losing someone like Virgin Atlantic, obviously, and then BA moving a lot of their flights to Heathrow, I suppose. But then I guess that's it's as I say, I don't think it's going to be closing anytime soon. Let's be honest. But yeah, good news.
So Jeff, the next story, which is all yours, is for once actual good news for Boeing about the MAX. I can't believe it.
All right, I need to communicate with the director. I am not supposed to read this, or I am?
Oh.
Okay. Here we go.
Reading from the link.
From the link. Okay. You want me to read the link? Okay. It's https:// No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. From Reuters.com. Boeing scores year's first 737 MAX order with Polish airline Enter Air. Now, before I continue with the reading of this article, try to figure out exactly which airplane we're talking about here. Boeing company won its first order for the grounded 737 MAX this year after Poland's Enter Air SA agreed to buy up to 4 variants of the jet, the U.S. plane maker said on Wednesday. The jet's recertification is still hanging in the balance more than a year after its worldwide grounding due to 2 fatal crashes, and the plane maker's woes have been compounded by the coronavirus
Quick drink, everyone.
Hitting air travel. Boeing's customers have canceled more than 400 orders for the 737 MAX jets this year, the company said last week. Based on a tighter accounting standard, the 737 MAX order cancellations and conversions to other aircraft models now stand at 864. The plane maker said on Wednesday that Enter Air placed a new order for 2 737-8 aircraft with options for 2 more jets. When the purchase agreement is fully exercised, Enter Air's 737 MAX fleet will rise to 10 aircraft, Boeing said. You see the things going on here? We're hearing it referred to as different names, and I think Ryanair even has kind of rebranded it to the 8200?
Yeah, that's right.
Like that?
They rebranded it to the 8200. So I mean, it's just I saw this story and got all excited, thinking that maybe we were going to get a little bit of clarity here. But the statement from Boeing has essentially done the precise opposite of that. We still have no idea, really. It's just are they wasting their time? Because everybody's going to know that it's still they're going to know it's a Max still. Surely.
No. Come on, Matt. You give the public way too much credit. They have no idea. They don't even know what a 737 is. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I know the media don't seem to for the amount of time. Don't get started on that.
And they're more informed than the public.
Well, that is the theory. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's worth noting, actually, Matt. You've always said in the past about how Ryanair has a single model fleet, a Dash 800. Yes. Enter Air have done the same thing. Enter Air have a 737-800 fleet, complete 22 of those, not as many as Ryanair, obviously, but they've just got purely just 737-800s in their fleet, and obviously these Maxes coming when they get delivered.
Wow.
So they've got a similar kind of idea, I think. Stick to one type of aircraft and hopefully save money.
Well, and
it's worked for one of the airlines here in the U.S. and a couple over there in Europe. So it's a good model.
Again, it's that thing, isn't it? Where I suppose it's easy on parts, isn't it? You can, you get lots
training,
of parts and
crew training.
Everything.
Training is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There isn't multiple aircrafts and stuff. I mean, if you've got multi-fleet, and presumably crew don't fly one particular aircraft.
It worked for Southwest,
do they?
It worked well for Southwest. They've done incredibly well with the 737.
And a part of me, the most surprising thing about that story for me personally was the fact that somebody's just bought one. I mean, it's still not. They're still grounded, right? I haven't lost the plot there.
No, they're still grounded. Yeah.
They just issued a notice for public rulemaking. The FAA did anyway, and I think it closes sometime September 21st or something like that. Getting eliciting commentary from people regarding what they think that Boeing and the FAA should do at this point, but apparently they've worked out all the issues involving MCAS and certification issues. So we, of course, if the public commentary doesn't close until late September, I can't imagine that we're going to really see the recertification of this jet until at the minimum at the end of the year or maybe beyond.
Yeah. So we've got a special guest joining us. He's obviously in a restaurant with Captain Al due to his face wear. But welcome, Micah.
Hi, guys. It's so nice to be invited to join you, and very, very happy to see you. And I'm coming to you live from the MacJets FBO here at KPWM at the Portland Jetport. And I'm here because I was invited down to come and walk around a KC-135. Getting back to the last story, I just have to comment on this. And, Jeff, I'm really curious what you have to say about that. Why in the world would the FAA open up public comment about the recertification of the 737 MAX? What's the public going to say? I'm still scared to fly on it. I don't want to go. What kind of I can't wait to read through the comments and see what there is. It makes no sense to me.
It's just for entertainment purposes, I think.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the whole Max thing has been a joke from start to finish. I think, to be fair, so you may as well go for full entertainment.
So how are things with the KC-135, Micah? I'm guessing you've had a walk round, or you're now going to have a walk round, or?
I had the walk around already. Unfortunately, I didn't have the Zoom link in time, so I couldn't bring it to you live. But I did send you some photos. I don't know if you can get them to Matt to post them on the
I'll
screen.
ping those to Matt.
Okay, so but send them to the PT UK number. That'll be the easiest thing for me.
Righty-ho, will do. So how is the
trouble understanding what you're saying, Micah? What are you saying, Micah?
Sue, can I take my mask off over here? Okay. Sue said I could take it off, but please notice it's a tab fabric mask. Look at all the little airplanes.
Look at that.
That Brian Coleman.
Is that one of Brian Coleman's?
Made for me, and that all the proceeds, tab fabric on Etsy, all the proceeds go to the Pasadena Women's Shelter. So It's a very special mask, and besides, you know, with the sunglasses and the mask, who is that mask man? You didn't even know it was me until I told you.
Yeah, we couldn't recognize your voice.
Yeah, now you can recognize my voice. How's that? Any better?
Oh yeah! Oh, it's Micah.
Oh, thank goodness.
Oh, Micah.
Yeah, that'll work really well on an audio podcast. Thanks for that, Jen. Never mind. Hey, all part of the fun. So tell us a bit about your walk around there, then, Micah. What was it like?
Well, it was really fabulous. Jackie, who works here at MacJets, knows that I love big gray military aircraft as well as many other aircraft. And when she gets something special in, she sends me a text. And so she sent me a text to let me know that it was here. And she let me know an hour before it was arriving on Wednesday, unfortunately, and I couldn't make it. But she said, come on down and we'll take a walk around. So she took me out on the tarmac, and we walked around it. And I got to tell a little bit of the history of the KC-135 and where it came from and why it was developed. And we just had a fabulous time. Took a bunch of great photos. I've never been that close to one. Well, I take that back. I have been inside one once before, but this is as close to airplanes as I have been since last year, based on this crazy world we're living in right now. I won't say the C word. But
not unless you've got a drink. Those are the rules.
Exactly. But it was just fabulous to be able to walk out of the tarmac and walk right up to it, and hopefully, Matt, you'll get the pictures. And
they're hopefully winging their way to the correct device any moment.
and also, in other great news, as some of you know, I've been having some issues with my back and was originally supposed to have surgery, which we've been managing to avoid and have avoided through physical therapy. This is the farthest I have been able to walk. And if this would have happened last year at this time, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. I mean, you saw what I was like back in September, Jeff, when you were up here, and we got to go to a small air show. And this was just great. So it was a real revelation for me to be able to get close to an airplane again. And it's as close as I've been to an airplane since Jeff and I had a chance to explore the B-24 and B-17 last year up in Lewiston.
That's great. Good to hear you're making great progress, Micah.
Yeah, it's going great. So I can actually, if you'd like, I'll walk you around and take you on a quick tour. Let me move the camera around. Jeff, this may look a little familiar to you. This is the jet port from a distance, obviously.
Okay.
I'm standing at the window here, and there's a tower, and there's a windsock. I'm hoping you can see it there. I'm not sure what
that's what an airport looks like. I remember.
And
it's been a while.
Well, Jeff, you've flown it here many times, and
yeah,
as I go down this way, there's the harbor visual. If you were coming into the harbor visual, you'd be landing right over there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walk over to this window, way down there, you can see the KC-135 that I just walked around.
Indeed, and as I say, I've got 4 of the pictures up there, so we'll just share with everyone what you've sent now. So there we go. This is the first one. As I say, it's a beast, isn't it? The Boeing 707 was developed from this aircraft and because of this aircraft. Originally, the tanker before this was I think the KB-50 and the K-397, and they just weren't fast enough to keep up. Well, they could fuel the old B-36 bombers, but they weren't fast enough to keep up with the B-47, the first all-jet bomber that really got involved in SAC. So Boeing, who created the B-47, had to come up with an aircraft to be able to refuel refuel it. So they developed the Dash 80, which some of us have seen down in the Udvar-Hazy Center in Washington, D.C. And from the Dash 80 was developed this aircraft, and this aircraft ended up becoming the 707, which is really what started the jet age of the airline industry was the Boeing 707. So it basically looks just like one, and other than it's a little gray and it's got a boom on the back of it, and
it's not got Pratt & Whitney JT8Ds.
Yeah, it's got much larger engines now.
Yes, it definitely has been re-engined. Definitely re-engined. And apparently the pilot who's flying this one has flown this particular aircraft for about 10 years. And it's based out of Jennifer's hometown out in Ohio.
Fantastic. I mean, they're great photos, Mike. Thank you very much for sending them in and sharing them with us. And thank you very much for dialing in and sharing your experience. Well, I hope you have a very enjoyable rest of your day. Got much else planned before you head home?
Oh, just a little grocery shopping, a few things here and there.
Wow. Oh, the glamour.
Very exciting day.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, thanks very much for joining.
Life.
Yeah, thanks for joining in, Micah, and thanks for sharing that with us. And we'll catch up with you on the show properly really soon, hopefully.
I hope so. You guys have a good time, and goodbye to everyone.
Thanks, Micah.
Take care, Micah.
Bye.
Wow. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? Thanks for that, Micah. That was.
He's a lucky fellow, isn't he? Getting invited to go and look at these things.
As you do, absolutely. It's not what you know, it's who, isn't it? I think that's
exactly.
Indeed. Anyway, where were we? I have no idea.
So the next story is this one is on the kotaku.co.uk website.
You having another go?
Show notes. Links will be in the show notes.
Yeah. There's lots.
And for those of you who do the flight simi type stuff, which I'll be doing again tomorrow morning when I plug everything back into where I'm sitting here now. This is the Microsoft Flight Simulator that obviously was released this week, the brand new Microsoft Flight Simulator. And John has been having a go on this, which he's been having lots of fun with, and sent us the visuals, which were, well, stunning. Let's just put it that way. So the headlines on this story, it's quite interesting, actually. For those of you who live in the UK, Microsoft Flight Simulator turns Buckingham Palace into a block of flats. So Microsoft Flight Simulator, in many ways, a masterpiece of AI and machine learning, powerful enough to have mapped out a scale model of the entire planet. With that, much ground to cover. However, there are always going to be a few mistakes. On a virtual trip around London, the BBC found that landmarks like the Shard and the Houses of Parliament were more or less intact. Sadly, though, many of the bridges that would help you get to them had mysteriously sunk into the Thames. Elsewhere, the AI has had to guess at the textures it wants to apply to specific buildings. Most notable is Buckingham Palace, which has had its neoclassical architecture replaced with that of a generic block of flats.
Yeah, now I've just actually paused. If you take a look at the visuals there, this is what. Now I think a lot of this data came from Bing Maps, from what I understand, and this is essentially what they think is Buckingham Palace. The image to the right of the aircraft, they think, is Buckingham Palace.
Looks just like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you can almost see the Queen giving us a little wave.
Yes, indeed. Yes, she was in residence that day, in her block of flats. But I mean, all jokes aside, I mean, it's a great video, isn't it? Actually, the detail is incredible.
The story does continue, and this is something that's been pointed out to me today by someone I've seen today out. The palace is at least where it's supposed to be, unlike some other landmarks. The gherkin, which is what I heard today, is entirely absent from the simulation. And it says here that they're prepared to cut developer Asobo Studios some slack. However, especially because its new take on London is a perfect practice run for what will happen if the Eat the Rich gang ever come good on their threats. Now, it does, cast a question whether how when Microsoft released the previous version of Microsoft Flight Sim, which I did have, with that came additional add-on scenery packs. So you could buy scenery packs for various states in the US. You could also buy scenery packs for various counties or for areas in England, such as east of England. You could buy a scenery pack. And these add-on packs were an additional anywhere from £40 to £50 to buy an additional scenery pack. Now, what does beg the question whether Microsoft will release more in-depth scenery packs or update them, in fact.
I think they might update Buckingham Palace, certainly. As I say, I'll just go back to that video very quickly. Here's a slightly different angle look. The lovely fountain that's at the top of the Mall? That's it there. It looks like a load of houses. I don't know what's that.
So I'm a little concerned that there's a big pickle missing.
Yeah, there's a couple of
things. The gherkin. Yeah, the gherkin's missing.
What is that?
That's the Pentagon there, I think, isn't it? The Pentagon you just flew over.
Oh, look, it is the Pentagon.
Something not quite right there, is it? But yes, no. There's a very tall Birkin there's a very tall building in the centre of London that's referred to as the Gherkin. Don't ask. It's anyway. It says.
Does it look like a big giant pickle?
It does indeed. It's quite green on the outside anyway. And Lane Street is saying it's a flight simulator, not a sightseeing simulator, which is probably a good point.
Good point, Lane. Good point, Lane.
Yeah. Although Paul is jumping to our defence here, Paul Tricker, and he's saying very true, but it's great that it looks reasonably realistic, certainly from a few thousand feet. Now, actually, we were sent another video by John, and he did a little bit of a guided. Well, it's not guided tour, but he had a little bit of a fly round. So let's give that a quick watch.
So I'll say one thing from the perspective of someone who plays X-Plane 11 frequently is that the internal visuals of the cockpit and the kind of distant view of scenery is very good. It's definitely very good. But I will say that X-Plane 11 definitely depicts runway textures a lot better. It might be different with other runways, but definitely I think X-Plane does, kind of pit the post with the runway textures. But it does look good. I mean, I will say that Microsoft have done a really good job with this, and like I said, especially with the water on here as well. The water looks fantastic. Oh, there's the Eiffel Tower. There's the Eiffel Tower on there, which is also good.
I should say also, actually, this was a screen grab rather than a video recording, which is why it was a lot smoother than this when the links were sent earlier. But a little bit of a fly around the pyramids look. It's the light that's what's getting me, like where it's obviously going dark, sort of sunset there and that. I mean, it's the attention to detail. Ever been much into sort of flight sim flying, Jeff?
Not at all. No, I've not.
Prefer to fly the real
thing.
Jeff hates the sim. Jeff hates the sim.
Oh, do you?
This kind of sim I wouldn't mind, but the technology wasn't really great, early on in my flying career. And by the time I was actually flying real airplanes, I didn't feel the need to do the flight simulation. But really come a long way. I'm very impressed with the
actually, I'm going to cover that a little bit. So actually, this is basically this picture here that John's put together for us here is like a flight, Microsoft Flight Sim through the years type thing. So you look at the top left as it sort of slowly sort of improves and stuff. I mean, really, it really has come on something incredible, hasn't it? Like,
actually, it's worth noting as well, Matt. There is a few videos online on YouTube, especially of where professional pilots who fly the Dreamliner have flown the Dreamliner on this game when it was released this week, and they've done a video. And one of the videos was with a pilot who flies for Norwegian, and he flew the 787-8, I think, or 8, yeah, dash 8, dash 9. And he did say that visually that the game is fantastic, but he said the actual flight deck and the aircraft that they've got on the game is pretty much there, but there are a few key things that Microsoft haven't put in on the flight deck which are quite important to a pilot. Well, one of them being the EFB.
Yeah. Well, we won't go on about it because we could go on about because we love stuff like this, don't we? But it's if anybody else gets their hands on it and has a bit of a fly, we'd love to hear about your experiences. So do please send those into podcast@planetalkinguk.com, the email address podcast@planetalkinguk.com. Don't forget also we do have a WhatsApp number +44 757 2249166, and the best thing about that is if you send a message at 2 o'clock in the morning, you wake up Carlos. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
love it. Absolutely love it.
So please do. Anyway, we'll move on to the next story, and this is on.
This is good. I like this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is on the Daily Mirror. Well, it's good. It's yes and no, I suppose. But anyway, the London City
Airport. It'll look good when
it's
finished.
Yes, well, that's true. London City Airport's £500 million makeover is forced to be paused, basically, during the pandemic. So London City has announced it will temporarily pause its £5 million development at the end of the year due to the coronavirus pandemic. The airport is currently undergoing a huge makeover, complete with brand new terminal for passengers. However, the pandemic has meant that with ongoing effects on the travel and aviation industry, the airport will be temporarily pushing back its plans. As the work has already begun, the airport will pause development at the end of the year after new aircraft stands, a full-length parallel taxiway and passenger facilities, including a new immigration facility with 10 new e-gates, has been completed. The airport initially suspended commercial flights when the pandemic broke earlier this year, but reopened in June with the new health and safety measures. During the closure, workers made significant progress with crucial elements of the scheme. The decision to push back flights of the development has also come as although flights have reopened, the airport says that recovery to previous levels will take longer than initially expected, causing a revaluation of the timing of the various phases. Still, there are aims to complete a number of projects by the end of 2020, including a new baggage facility and security screening technology, both of which are set to launch next summer. Robert Sinclair, the CEO of London City Airport, said that given our location in the heart of London and the resilient nature of aviation, the airport and our shareholders remain very confident about the long-term prospects of London City and the vital role we can play in reconnecting London and the British economy as we recover from the shock of COVID-19. For the time being, we have taken the decision to focus our attention on delivering the vital additional airfield infrastructure which will provide our existing and prospective airlines customers with the potential to bring new generation aircraft, to this airport in greater numbers, which will be a crucial aspect of how we build a better, more sustainable airport. Completing the terminal extension and new East Pier very much remains part of our future, and with the foundations for both in place, we stand ready to take those projects forward when demand returns. In the months ahead, we will work with airlines and government to help restore confidence in the UK aviation market, and we will continue to support our local authority and our communities as they plan for life beyond the crisis. Obviously, it's a shame that a project like this has had to be paused, but I guess we can sort of understand why, can't we, at the moment? I mean, there's so much going on. As I say, although they are doing it in China, which is, I suppose a very good point, isn't it? It's not sort of holding them back there, but I don't know, perhaps we're being a bit more nervous. I don't know. Anyway, I'm really bored about talking about coronavirus-y type stuff. Should we move on? Oh,
just a bit though, Matt. That does. If it looks anything like it does in the video,
in the videos, yeah, it'll be a great
on there. It will look really, really good.
I've never been to London City. I don't know what it's like now, to be honest with you. We'll have to ask Nev next week, won't we?
Yeah, Nev's
big city.
There. We'll have to ask Nev.
It's a big city, yes.
Surprised you've never been there. I've been there.
Right, yes, okay, fair enough.
So, Jeff,
I don't think I can get a coach in there anymore. I think that's probably what. Anyway.
Oh yeah, could be.
Jeff, you've got the last story, Jeff, and
good.
This is all about those amazing things that have rotors on that spin round and round.
Well, it's obvious that you saved this for me because I'm a helicopter pilot.
Quite.
I'm not a helicopter pilot. Okay, helicopter training set to take off at Blackpool Airport from the Blackpool Gazette. Let's see. The team behind international helicopter support business Helispeed Services has started offering helicopter flying lessons based at Hangar 3. These will be the first rotary wing lessons to come from the airport in 2 years. But more significantly, because the Helispeed has years of experience in matching pilots and engineers to jobs worldwide, the new Helispeed Academy aims to train helicopter pilots with the specific skills they need to secure high-paid jobs. Business owner Jeff Packer, who himself, I love that name, Jeff Packer, who himself learned to fly at Blackpool Airport 30 years ago, said, depending on which specific skills and role a pilot has, misspelling, helicopter pilots could earn between 300 and 800 pounds per day. He said, we will teach beginners to fly and help existing pilots keep their skills up, but we will also offer specific world-class training so that our students' skills will be top class and suited to the role they want to carry out, from flying for the oil and gas sector to being a helicopter ferry pilot to search and rescue or flying from the back of a millionaire's luxury yacht. Ooh, I'd like to do that one. So, shall I continue to read, or is that good enough?
I think that'll probably do. That'll do. That's giving us the gist of it, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
Actually, I was just looking, Matt, about getting your helicopter, because we're all about pilot's license, but the helicopter license, because we're
You're
very
not
lucky.
talking to me, surely.
Where we live, Matt, here
Yes.
in the east of Anglia,
In Beccles,
we're
yes.
lucky that we actually do have a helicopter training academy not far from us, actually.
Yes, that's true.
And they say that so it's a 45 hours of flying, 25 hours must be dual instruction, 10 hours of solo flying, including 5 hours cross country. The course is structured, allows for an approved syllabus, including both ground briefings and flight exercises. You must be a minimum of 17 years old to go for your helicopter license. And also you have to have and obtain a Class 2 medical certificate. And then you've got to pass 7 written exams, pass a radio exam, and pass a flight test with an examiner to demonstrate your skills. And then you can have a JAR, FCL, PPL. For a
Easy
helicopter.
peasy.
Yeah.
You said a load of numbers there.
Sounds like a
that
lot of
mean,
stuff.
That you said a load of numbers there that mean literally zero.
Doesn't say how much
Yes.
this. It doesn't say how much exactly it would cost, but
Free.
just to give
It's
you,
all
just to
free.
give.
Free,
I hope so.
winning.
Just to give you an idea, most of the listeners will probably know what a Robinson R44 helicopter is.
Beg your
There's
pardon?
quite a few of them here in the UK. But for a 60-minute trial flight in a Robinson's R44, for those of you who may be in the US watching or listening to the show, a 60-minute trial flight here in the UK in a Robinson R44 will set you back £510.
What, an hour?
Yikes.
For a trial lesson for an hour?
For
1
1 hour?
For a trial lesson in an R44.
They are expensive things to operate.
You could go to the States and back for that, pretty much, couldn't you?
Yeah, but can you land vertically?
No, you can't.
But if you'd like to sponsor Matt to do a 15-minute hover challenge,
not.
That'll cost you £115.
I can't think of. I don't even know where to begin to tell you what's wrong with that idea. It's just like no. Nothing has been said on the podcast. I'm going to delete it from the logs. That is the advantage of being the one in charge of all the uploading and stuff. Okay, I need to lie down in a darkened room now.
To be completely honest with you, Matt, I have no interest in learning how to fly a helicopter either. So.
Oh no! I mean, if money wasn't an object, it would be something I'd love to learn to
Really?
do. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
They amaze me. It's as I say, I've referred to them. It's like, aeroplanes are made by engineers, helicopters are made by people from Hogwarts. It's just it defies physics as far as I'm concerned. Frankly,
I'm just checking the chat rooms to see if anyone's piped up.
right? Nobody, hopefully, with any silly ideas. Anyway, can you move on, please? Stop it.
Oh yeah, Rich Adams agrees. Anyway,
No, he
moving
doesn't.
back
No.
to the show. The next part of the show. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Over the last few weeks, you remember a few weeks back, we ran a competition to win that all-important voucher, which was won by Andrew van der Sarg, and Andrew Keegan very kindly came on the show back on episode 324 to give us that voucher. But you must remember that part of the competition was to send us in your Aviation in My Life stories. And for the next few weeks, as you know, we'll be playing out the stories that have been sent to us by everyone who did send us a story. And coming up this week, we have got the all-important story from Stephen Taylor, all about aviation in his life. So here it is.
I am a long-time listener of the PT UK podcast, and after hearing the announcement of your plane reclaimers online shop competition, Aviation in My Life, I have finally stumped up the courage to submit my first bit of feedback. I have been very fortunate to have been around aviation for all of my 36 years, and much to Captain Al's dismay, the aviation I have been around was of the grey variety. My biggest aviation interest is potentially somewhat controversial. As much as I love all things that fly, in my book, rotary aviation is where it is at. For my story of aviation in my life, I would like to regale the tale of my first helicopter flight. My first helicopter flight, and only my second flight ever, came about on the morning of the 2nd of February 1998. I was just a normal 14-year-old boy walking the family dog in the half-term holidays when I was interrupted by my father, whose car screeched to a halt near to the field where Ben and I were enjoying the crisp morning air. This was rather strange, as my father was supposed to be at work, but all would soon become apparent. At the time, we lived at RAF Northolt, located in the London borough of Hillingdon, where my father was stationed as a helicopter navigator. This posting was no ordinary posting for him, however. This posting was with number 32, the Royal Squadron. My father's career had seen him start with pilot training on the Jet Provost, which was going well until the instrument phase, where it was decided for him that perhaps navigator training would be a better bet. Upon successful completion of navigator and basic fastjet navigator training on the Hawk and the Dominie, it was on to the Phantom OCU. It was here at the Phantom OCU, however, that it was decided that perhaps Captain Nick and my father's paths would not cross in a crew capacity. And so, it was on to RAF Lossiemouth in Morayshire for his first posting on the Avro Shackleton AEW Mark II. The shack, in this guise, was used for airborne early warning, and my father spent 4 years hunting bears and any other visitors from the east before talking Captain Nick and his chums onto them for a game of international cat and mouse. Following a ground tour in Germany, it was back to the UK and to transition to rotary, predominantly flying the Westland Wessex in the search and rescue role. My earliest childhood memories start at this point, and from then on I have been passionate about helicopters, with many a happy hour spent in crew rooms listening to tales of daring do and in hangars climbing all over them. I was in awe of these machines and longed to be able to take flight and put into reality the sensations that my imagination had conjured up from the times I had spent pretending to fly whilst playing in the cockpits and cabins of these wonderful machines. And back to that February morning. My father was clearly in a rush to be somewhere. That somewhere was work. Only he needed my mother, sister and I to accompany him. It transpired that a family's flight had been authorised, and keen for us not to miss out, he had gone on a foraging mission to round us all up. With all of us in tow, it was on to the base and the familiar surrounds of the squadron. Only today's visit wasn't to pop in quickly for my father to get something or drop something off mid-Saturday morning grocery shop, as often happened. Today's visit had much more purpose about it. As we waited for the safety brief, it was very apparent that this would be no ordinary flight, or ordinary helicopter. The helicopter that I would take my very first flight in was the helicopter that remains today to be my favourite, the Westland Wessex. However, this is no ordinary Wessex, but one of only 2 VVIP HCC4 variants. The Wessex was a turbine-powered development of the American Sikorsky S-58 that was developed for the UK to fulfil the need for a general-purpose helicopter capable of troop carrying, air ambulance and ground attack roles. The 2 HCC4s were subsequently ordered to equip the Queen's flight which became number 32 of the Royal Squadron in 1995. The HCC-4s were built to HC2 standards, but with the main cabin having a VIP interior finish, furnishings and soundproofing, plus an external step below the cabin door, and Decca Mark 19 rolling map display navigation equipment installed on the flight deck. The HCC-4s were also very distinctive with their red and dark blue paint scheme. The HCC-4s were sadly retired in 1998 when 32 Squadron gave up the task of providing helicopters for the royal family. The royal household awarded a 10-year contract to a civilian entity flying S-76s. The Queen's helicopter flight, as it became, operates to this day out of RAF Odium in Hampshire with the F-76. That morning, I remember vividly that the hangar floor was buffed to a perfect shine, and my father had told me that the steps up to the elevated cockpit of the Wessex were plated in gold, although I often wondered if he was pulling my leg. Either way, this was not your average flying club, but something quite different, something quite special. I recall thinking that the lower passenger cabin, where I now sat, was not quite as plush and grand as I thought it ought to be, especially considering the type of person that normally would have occupied the seat that now supported a 14-year-old with a grin that was literally from ear to ear. Anticipation and excitement grew as things began to happen. New sounds and spells began to fill the air as my father and the pilot set about their business of preparing this graceful machine for flight. Soon the rhythmic thumping of rotor blades filled all of my senses, and as the collective lever was raised and we became wheels light, I was in awe. All of these years, wondering what it must be like to fly in a helicopter, were now about to be answered. Before long, we were airborne and heading east from RAF Northolt for a flight along the London Heli lanes. The Heli lanes are defined routes through central London, whereby pilots navigate by visual reference to ground features with limited assistance from air traffic control. The HCC-4s were normally crewed by a pilot, a navigator and a ground engineer, with the engineer being responsible for the helicopter always being serviceable and whilst airborne to double up as a VVIP steward. The engineer in the cabin that morning gave me a headset briefly to hear what was going on in the cockpit from my position in the aft port seat of the cabin. The cockpit of the Wessex was situated high above the forward section of the fuselage, immediately above the forward end of the cabin and just aft of the nose section. It was somewhat surreal for me as I looked around in wonderment at how my morning dog walk had evolved into me sitting 1,000 feet or so above central London in the royal family's helicopter whilst listening to my father and the pilot discuss the building of a new clothing store at a retail park in between air traffic control transmissions and then performing checklists. For them, it was another day at the office, something quite routine and well practiced. But for me, it was something quite different, an experience I will never forget. As we entered the Heli lanes, soon famous and noteworthy landmarks I had visited many times whilst touring London came into sight. Wembley Stadium, the River Thames, Big Ben, the Houses of Parliament, St Paul's Cathedral, Buckingham Palace, Canary Wharf, and the Millennium Dome all whizzed beneath my feet. The Millennium Dome, back then in 1998, was nothing more than the large circle carved into the ground, awaiting construction to start in earnest before its grand opening in less than 2 years' time. Before I knew it, we were on approach back into RAF Northolt, and within a blink of an eye I was back home and doing what most 14-year-olds do. I don't recall much else about that February half-term, but to this day I remember that flight. A flight made even more special that it was shared by my mother, my father and my sister. The Wessex I flew on that day was XV732, which can still be enjoyed if you visit the Royal Air Force Museum at Hendon. Her sister, XV733, can be viewed at the International Helicopter Museum in Weston-super-Mare. I now have just over 630 hours of flying experience, of which 365 hours or so are in helicopters, and it is this time that I have the greatest fondness for. Owing to my upbringing and the experiences I was very fortunate to have had, from the age of about 4, I had dreamed of making a helicopter my office. This dream took 30 years to become a reality I thought would never come to fruition due to some eyesight deficiencies. However, I never gave up, and as a qualified paramedic, I can now call myself an air ambulance paramedic and a qualified helicopter technical crewman with what I shall call Acme Hems North. One final anecdote before I wrap up this aviation in my life. You may recall at the beginning of this tale I mentioned that my first helicopter flight was only my second flight ever. My first flight ever was in one of 32 Squadron's BAE 146 VVIP aircraft. I suppose not many people can say that their first fixed and rotary-wing flights were in the Royal's personal aircraft. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this. I'd like to thank Carlos, Matt, Nev and Armando, as well as the wider aviation podcasters for bringing together this aviation family. Clear skies and tailwinds.
Wow, Stephen, thank you so very much for that. How about that as an experience? Seriously, your very first flight ever was on BA, was it BA 146, did he say, or BE?
No, the helicopter, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm jealous because he had a chance to fly on the 146, and it's one of those aircraft, Matt, that we had quite frequently visiting Norwich International Norwich International Airport.
Right, is that Norwich London Airport?
Norwich London,
right,
yeah.
Okay,
and the thing with the BAE 146, it is one of those kind of aircraft that they flew quite regularly into London City Airport as well. But it had someone referred to it as like having 4 hair dryers under the wing on that. But it was actually, to be fair, it was a really well built aircraft, the 146, and lasted a lot.
So what was it? Sorry, remind me.
A BAE 146.
BAE 146. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, that was his first. Yeah, he was saying that was his first ever experience in that story. Was as a young person, basically on that. Graham's got a great comment here. He's saying, "Great story. Heli flying down the Thames must be amazing." That's a good point, actually. I mean, that is quite a view. I mean, I've done it a couple of times on the old Clipper. If you go to London, actually, and I quite often park at the O2 and then go into London on the Clipper, and that is just such a cool experience. So imagine flying that same route.
It's safe to say that Stephen Taylor was very lucky.
Absolutely, completely agree there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is time to move on to what many would argue when he's here is the best part of the show. But we haven't got Armando, so goodness only knows what it's going to be like this week. Carlos, perhaps you could do the honours and do the introductions.
So we are going to move on to the part of the show that's always good for all the military fans, especially Mr. Warner, if you want to, you're listening and you've been in the chat room. So it's time to do the military segment. So if everyone is ready,
here we go. And Armando apparently is in the chat room, so we're going to get marked, no doubt, for how well we do here.
No, I like this story because I got up close and personal with one of these at RIAT a few years back. But this is on flightglobal.com, and Boeing has delivered a key training device to support personnel operating the UK Royal Air Force's 737 next-gen based P-8 Poseidon MRA-1 Maritime Patrol Aircraft Fleet. Manufactured by training specialist CAE, the Operational Flight Trainer, OFT, was flown from Orlando, Florida, to Glasgow Prestwick Airport in Scotland using an Antonov Airlines-operated AN-124. The UK's Defence Equipment and Support Organisation notes that the commercial freighter was employed because of the OFT's width and height that make it too big to be transported by any RAF aircraft, including the Boeing C-17 Air Strategic Airlifter. Weighing 9.5 tons, the device is 4.01 meters, or 13 feet 2 inches wide, and 3.7 meters high and 7.39 meters long. It was transported by road for the remainder of its journey to RAF Lossiemouth in Moray. One of two such devices ordered for the Royal Air Force, the OFT, will be used to train Poseidon pilots. These devices also can be networked with a pair of rear crew trainers used by mission systems operators. The simulators will allow for more complex training of multiple operational scenarios in a structured setting and reduce the cost of carrying out live in-flight training, Boeing says. The equipment will be housed within a $1 million or $132 million strategic facility now being completed by Boeing Defence UK. This also will hold numerous other training devices, 3 Poseidon aircraft, accommodation for 3 squadrons, and mission support facilities, the company adds. Temporarily being flown by 120 squadron personnel from RAF Kinloss while infrastructure work nears completion at RAF Lossiemouth. The UK's Poseidon fleet will grow from a current pair of maritime patrol aircraft, anti-submarine warfare assets, to 9 strong fleet. It'll be great to see these flying. Operated by 2 frontline squadrons, the remaining aircraft on order will continue to arrive in the UK throughout this year and next, with the 9th and final aircraft being delivered due at the end of 2021. And I must admit, honestly, these, I know that they're obviously based on the 737, but seeing these up close and personal is quite a thing with these. And it's good to see that we're finally getting in the UK a maritime patrol aircraft back after not having one for so many years.
Well, that is true. That is true.
So, Jeff, next story is for you, and it's about Israeli combat aircraft.
Yes, and I hope it has a whole bunch of hard words that I cannot pronounce. Let's see. Oh, and yeah, does Amardo pick out these stories?
He does, yes, absolutely.
Because I noticed that on the last one, it was from Armando, Florida. So that was kind of odd.
Right.
Okay. Oh, wait, no, that's Orlando. My bad. Okay. Story number 2. Here we go. From the Aviationist.
I've officially lost control.
Aviationist.com. Sorry. For the first time in history, Israeli combat aircraft have landed in Germany to take part in Blue Wings 2020 exercise. On August 17, 2020, 6 Israeli Air Force F-16C/Ds Barak, belonging to the 101 and 105 Squadron from Hatzor Air Base, arrived at Norvenich Air Base in western Germany, where they will remain for 2 weeks to take part in exercise Blue Wings 2020. The jets, using call sign Atomi 16, were supported by 3 B-707 tankers using the radio call sign Giant 123, a G-550 CAEW, which is a conformal airborne early warning aircraft, Nachshon Altam. How is it that your director always helps you guys out with pronunciations, and I don't hear a thing right now from the director producer? Okay. Not some... Liz, are you there? Can you help me, please? Radio call sign Glory 1. Oh, I just heard her. And a C-130 radio call sign IAF 133. Interestingly, tomorrow, August 18th, as part of the exercise, a formation led by a IAF G500 with 2 Israeli F-16s and 2 German Air Force Eurofighters will carry out a flyover of the Dachau concentration camp in memory of the Holocaust victims, and will then fly over the Fürstenfeldbruck airport close to Munich, thank you, in memory of the 11 Israeli Olympic delegation members that were murdered in the 1972 Olympics terrorist attack. The deployment of the Israeli combat aircraft to Germany can be tracked online thanks to ADS-B. It looks like the Israeli formation led by Giant 1 was met by GAF Typhoons. Interestingly, as the radio conversation proves, the B-707 was not willing to say the remaining fuel in minutes when asked by the German pilot. The answer is, quote, "We have a lot of fuel." Yeah, because that's what they carry.
Absolutely.
A lot of fuel.
I think you have to if you're doing anything like that. It's clearly the way forward. That's the only trouble when we do this, isn't it? I sort of do miss it when we don't have Armando, because of course none of us really know enough about this to be able to pass any comments. So yes, do feel free to chip in, chat room, and we'll come back to you perhaps at the end of the military with any comments you've got on the stories. In the meantime, I'll move on to the next one, and it's the Liz says apparently. So Auntie Liz says that you're on your own. Apparently, Jeff.
Thanks a lot.
always a big supporter. So anyway, so the F-117 Nighthawks now appear to be flying as adversaries in the Red Flag aerial war games. This is from the Drive.com website. The F-117 Nighthawk story just gets richer with age. Over the last half decade, we have seen a consistent expansion of flying operations by the supposedly retired stealth attack jet. Although I have, it says, although I personally, not me, have long posited, that the F-117 that are still flying would be involved in aggressor operations. The Air Force demand for low observable adversary capabilities that has since become clear. Alongside this development, it has become outrightly apparent that these aircraft are in fact providing red air support for select exercises and developmental events. Now, I've had too much beer to read this story. This was clearly a mistake. Now it appears that their role as aggressors has been expanded in the form of participation in Red Flag, the Air Force's largest international air warfare exercise, held multiple times a year across the sprawling Nevada Test and Training Range, or the NTTR, with the central hub of the exercise being Nellis Air Force Base in North Las Vegas. What we know is that a handful of roughly 4 dozen F-117, is it 117s? How am I supposed to pronounce that? Does anybody know? Is it the
F-117?
The 117s, still stored in Tonopah Test Range Airport, TTR, have continued to take part in research and development efforts, largely in relation to low observable testing, which includes trialling new radar absorbent coatings and off-board sensors. They are a central player in what is emerging to be a low observable integrated testing task force that largely emanates from the TTR and includes access to a number of exotic testbed aircraft, sensors and threat representative systems. But another part of the F-117's duties has blossomed into a more traditional role. In May of 2020, the F-117s did something unprecedented. They flew a number of Red Air missions over the Pacific against a Navy carrier strike group that was undergoing its most deeply integrated and complex training just prior to deployment. Since then, there have been spotted over the vast expanses of the Mojave Desert and the NTTR. They even landed at Edwards Air Force Base recently, another first since their retirement a dozen years ago, at least as far as we know. All of this has perpetuated a sense that the F-117s are creeping steadily out of the shadows once again. These latest developments underscore that the secretive F-117 force, which has a direct association with the Dark Knights moniker, is very much involved in adversary support, air support, beyond discrete test and developmental duties. It would make some sense that they are providing a dissimilar low observable threat representation for a frontline air crews to contend with, at least until the 65th Aggressor Squadron, which will be outfitted with F-35As, comes online and can assume a similar, albeit more robust, role. So the F-17, the F-117 essentially has been more or less retired. Then is that what I'm understanding? But not now, basically.
Yeah, it looks like they're taking it back from retirement. And coincidentally, I'm going to be going into training in October on the 117. Oh, wait, no, that's the 717. Never mind. That's
It's very
Wrong
close.
airplane, sorry.
It's very
Forget
close. I'd love to see you in a fighter jet, Jeff. I think that would be quite the experience.
It would be.
It would be. Okay, that's all we've got to say. That's oh my goodness me, it's going all a little bit bananas here. So Armando first of all has said that Armando's saying that you guys are doing great, which is very kind of him. Also, interestingly enough, Masha is saying that looks like they're made in Minecraft. Yes, they are quite square, aren't they?
They look like that.
They're very boxy, aren't they, with what's going on there? Yeah, Pip is suggesting that they don't look particularly aerodynamic or efficient. Well, I mean, he'd know, obviously, being the... It's again, Paul is suggesting that perhaps they are more aerodynamic than you, Pip, which is perhaps a bit personal.
Very personal.
Absolutely. There we are, all part of the fun. Lane, again, great point here. No need to look good when you cannot be seen. Good point. Good point. Yes. Yes. Right. Okay.
That'll be good. That'll be good.
We're busy reading all the chat room comments here, so apologies for pausing here. But Auntie Liz is saying that she said she wants to see Jeff and Nick in a fighter together. That would be quite an experience. Who would be flying though? That's the question.
I'd love to see Nick and Jeff in the C-141 together. That would be quite fun.
Me too.
Yeah.
We'll have to do that sometime.
Right, okay. Just numbers mean nothing to me. There we go. We've got one more military story to go, Carlos. That's with you.
Yeah, this next story is coming from Russia about an unmanned aerial vehicle that looks absolutely nothing like a Northrop Grumman B-2, I will say. Okay. Anyway, we'll continue. This one is on the Popular Mechanics website, and Russia Hunter is unlike anything in America's arsenal. So Russia is pushing its new unmanned combat aerial vehicle, which looks nothing like a B-2, out the door and into the hands of the military sooner than expected. The S-70 Okhotnik, or the Hunter drone, which looks nothing like a B-2, will enter service with Russian Aerospace Force a year earlier than planned in 2024. That means the Hunter could become the first high-performance combat drone designed for large-scale conventional warfare to enter service with any country. Russian media first spotted the drone back in January 2019 as it was performing tests at the Novosibirsk-based Chkalov aviation plant. The aviation resembles a boomerang, or a B-2, with a large air intake at the front on the top half of the aircraft and a shrouded engine nozzle. The famous Sukhoi Design Bureau, makers of Cold War jets and today's Su-35 Flanker E's and Su-57 Phelan fighters, designed the drone. They didn't take anything at all from the B-2. Tipping his scales at 20 tons, Okhotnik is about as heavy as a two-engined American F-15 Eagle fighter. The drone is capable and designed to carry up to 13,200 pounds of munitions, including air-to-air and air-to-ground missiles, in an internal weapons bay. The drone will have a range of 3,240 nautical miles and a top speed of 620 miles per hour. Okhotnik was originally described as an autonomous drone capable of carrying out missions in support of crewed aircraft, and American efforts to develop a loyal wingman that can operate alongside crewed fighters led to reports that Okhotnik would follow the same path. Okhotnik can reportedly execute strike missions against important enemy targets, including air defense systems, headquarters units, and others. Russia has been trying to catch up to the West in the field of autonomous weapon systems, in one case rushing the Uran-9 unmanned ground vehicle drone into combat in Syria, and Uran-9 performed badly in real-world operational conditions, though the Russians did not learn important lessons.
I think that is officially my favourite word of the day, actually. I can't even say it. Okhotnik. I think that's my favourite word. I absolutely love it. Actually, all jokes aside, I was looking at you were saying it looked like, would you say it looked like been taken from a B-2?
It doesn't look anything at all like the Northrop Grumman B-2.
Right, okay, all right. I mean, to me, it just looks like a dogfish, you know, the ones that are usually at the bottom of the tropical water tank, sort of. It looks like it looks like one of those flatfish to me, but there we go. It's an interesting aircraft, shall we say? Yeah. Graham Haley is saying actually in the chat room apparently that it looks. I'm trying. Sorry, my technology is misbehaving. He's saying it looks very similar to the BAE Systems Tyrannus. I think. Apologies if I've said that wrong. Going back to the previous story, actually, Paul Tricker was saying that the F-117 was and still is absolutely groundbreaking. Say what you like about them, they still had an incredible job. They still did an incredible job, as does everything followed by it since a result. I mean, it's this is why we love the chat room, you see, because when we haven't got Armando, they know all about this stuff. Try and look a little more interested, Carlos, please.
Well, I was going to say, before we move on, look up the X-44A and see if that doesn't look somewhat similar to that. Okay,
I'm
Russian
on that. One moment,
drone.
caller.
I could almost sense Jonathan Warner just like, checking these up on Google.
Absolutely. Here we go. I'm just going to try and... there we go. That'll do. Open image in new tab. There we are. It's all right. Just talk amongst yourselves for a minute. It's really slick here. I don't know if anybody had noticed.
Sure. Nobody. What? What's going on?
Indeed. There we go. And that's what Jeff's talking about. There we go. So if you're watching the video version of this, I see what you mean. It's a similar sort of design, isn't it? That same sort of flat thing with the hole in the front.
Flying wing.
Yeah, absolutely. But these are drones. That's the thing that gets me. I mean, so these are literally autonomous aircraft, aren't they? They're not. There aren't people in them. It's incredible.
No one ever pinches any ideas from anyone else. They're always original designs.
Okay,
just
lovely.
like the Russian C5 ski.
Yes. Or the Russian 757 ski.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So before we get sued, I think what we should probably do is move on to the next part of the show, and that for me, Carlos. Actually, why don't you introduce it this week?
Yes, so the next part of the show, it's one of the favourite segments of the show for a lot of people, including my father. And it's obviously the Plain Truth segment with Captain Al. And also this week, a special guest. And this week's episode is all about turbulence.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Plain Truth, and this week we're going to be talking about turbulence. Joining me as always is the legend that is Captain Al. Hi Captain Al.
A very good evening, Matt.
And how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And your good self?
Oh, living the dream as always. There we are. That's the mandatory pleasantries out of the way. Joining us, actually, we have another special guest joining us today, which I'm very excited to say. A gentleman who has the pleasure / misfortune of working for a company called WeatherQuest that's based here in Norwich. It gives me my great pleasure to welcome Dan Holley. Hi, Dan.
Yeah, hi there, Matt. They're a great company to work for. Oh, trust me on that one.
Absolutely. Well, with Jim Bacon as the previous CEO, who could possibly say otherwise? Absolutely. Now, Dan, I've troubled your rare opportunity of an evening off to talk about the word turbulence. Now, turbulence is something that we come across quite regularly when it comes to flying, and really, I have literally no idea what turbulence is. So I wondered if perhaps you could fill me in.
Yeah, sure. So turbulence is primarily driven by what we call wind shear. And that's basically where the winds are changing speed or direction, either in the horizontal or the vertical. So, the atmosphere is very chaotic. It is a fluid. It's constantly changing. And there will be boundaries where you've got these sharp gradients in temperature, for example, but also these sharp gradients in sort of wind speed or direction. So if you're crossing one of these boundaries, you're going to experience a lot of twisting and turning motions and eddies and that sort of thing. And that will ultimately induce turbulence as well. And there are many different ways that you can get turbulence. Obviously, the one that probably comes to mind first off is near thunderstorms, because there's a lot of motion going on within a thunderstorm and that affects the air around it. But other places where you can get turbulence are near hills as well. So if the air is flowing over a hill on the leeward side, you'll get a lot of turbulence developing as well with standing waves. So if an airport is near a mountain range, for example, such as Denver in Colorado, then that could have an impact on aircraft trying to land or take off there, depending on the wind direction, of course, relative to the high ground that's nearby. But another place that you can get turbulence is on the edge of jet streams as well, because there's a sharp gradient of wind speed within the jet stream and outside of it. and that sharp gradient can also induce a lot of spin and a lot of turbulence and eddies and that sort of thing there as well.
So thanks, Dan. That's really good. The interesting point for me, obviously, is so you're saying there's obviously quite a lot of movement in the air, essentially, which is what's generating that bump, if you like, that we're feeling. Now, Al, obviously that has a major impact on how you're planning your routes, presumably, as well, because, I mean, we've all seen horror stories and photographs of people being thrown around in the air, inside the aircraft as a result of this. So, I mean, what steps do you try and do? What data do you have access to, if you like, to change your plan, for example, to try and avoid these? And what impact does the turbulence have on the aircraft when you're flying?
Okay, well, we're lucky in Europe that we have access to some pretty good weather prediction computer systems. But I think Dan will probably admit that it's not an exact science, the forecasting of turbulence. And where you're using basically a paper chart with some symbols drawn on it with your route superimposed, you've got to really think in 3 dimensions, because the difference of a couple of 100 feet can be the difference between a really smooth ride and really quite a rough ride. And, you know, maybe just a few 100 meters left or right of that can have the same effect. So typically, when Dan was talking about jet streams, I know a lot of people kind of struggle visualizing these things, because like a lot of things, if you can't see it, it's difficult to believe that it's there. It's a bit like electricity. Some people still think it's, you know, it's weird magic. But what I say to my clients,
Norfolk, I think, yeah.
What I say to my clients when we're discussing turbulence with regards to fear of flying is, try to imagine a river or a stream, and there are parts of that river or stream that are quite sort of turbulent with white water. And there are other periods where it's very, very calm. And if you think about the river or the stream as its whole journey, well, that's very similar to an airline flight. So we have planning charts, we have significant weather charts that reasonably accurately predict where there is going to be cumulonimbus clouds, they're thunderstorm clouds in simple terms, and where we have jet streams, and there can be many jet streams just in Europe. And whilst they're predominantly from the west traveling east, they do change direction from time to time, and all of a sudden they'll take a sudden dive to the south. So you're not just necessarily, if you're flying west to east, you're not just sat in one or parallel in one, you're crossing them as well. So we do try to plan our route to avoid the worst of the forecast turbulence. The difficulty that myself face, and probably the meteorologists face, is it is just a forecast. And there are many occasions where we get turbulence that was just not forecast at all, or equally where really bad turbulence is forecast and there isn't any. So it can be a bit frustrating. And unfortunately, we don't really have any substantial equipment on board the aircraft that can forecast clear air turbulence. We can quite clearly see build-ups, so where there's cloud, because our weather radar can reflect off moisture, but what it can't do is it can't reflect off clear air. So, yeah, it's a challenge, and I genuinely believe that in maybe the next 10 or 15 years, the technology for being able to accurately predict turbulence will get a lot better. What do you think, Dan? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And in some ironic way, I think aviation is going to play a key role in that as well, because we rely very heavily on the measurements that get taken on board of planes that then get fed into the computer models that drive the forecast at the end of the day. So, you know, the more we can get measurements from high up in the atmosphere, the better understanding we'll have of these jet streams, and hopefully the better we can then predict them further down the line. But like you say, the jet stream, I think a lot of people think of it as like a straight line across the Atlantic, for example, from Canada to the UK. But actually, it can wave about quite a bit. You get lots of ridges and troughs in it. And that makes it very complicated to pick out parts of the jet stream that are more likely to produce the areas of quite bad turbulence in places. And as a result, the winds are not necessarily going from west to east. They can go back on themselves sometimes as well. So it's incredibly complex, the upper atmosphere, and it changes all the time. So, you take off from Heathrow, but it's always evolving on that journey as well. It doesn't stay in a fixed position even while you're flying across the Atlantic. It does change over time.
Absolutely. One of the things that I sometimes talk to people about, and they think that I'm barking mad.
No, surely not, Captain Al.
we obviously use very, very powerful computers. All of the Met offices around the world are, all using these supercomputers. But of course, these supercomputers need data to work with. And people think I'm barking mad when I talk about weather reporting buoys out in the Atlantic that are taking the sea level pressure, the height of the waves, the temperature, the dew point, and that sort of thing. And these are all fed into the computer. And something that Dan alluded to there is the fact that, it's hand in glove meteorology and aviation, because when we fly across the Atlantic, for example, the aircraft either manually or automatically are sending weather data back that is fed into these computers. And admittedly, probably 10 or so years ago, when I was reasonably frequently traveling across the Atlantic, if we were flying on a non-standard route, so if, say, we were going down to Cancun in Mexico, we would be asked to send hourly Met reports. And this would just be the wind direction, velocity, and the outside air temperature, and this is fed into those supercomputers. It's not just all by magic.
Quite.
But people generally think that these weather reporting buoys out in the Atlantic were stuff of the 1940s, but they're still out there, aren't they, Dan? Tell me I'm not lunatic.
No, they're definitely still out there. In fact, last night, one of them recorded a wind gust of 112 miles an hour off the south coast of Ireland. So, they're still very much a key part of all this sort of weather data assimilation that goes into these weather models. Aviation, satellite data increasingly so as well, but obviously land-based weather stations as well. But for a country like the UK, where most of our weather comes in off the Atlantic, we don't have a great way, really, of seeing what is going on over the Atlantic. We've got some satellite data, but having aviation and planes going across the Atlantic all day, taking these measurements is vital, really, to improve our forecasting of what may be coming towards Western Europe.
So, absolutely, a very, very simple illustration of that. I mean, I grew up in southwest Wales, and if you want to know what the weather's going to be like in southwest Wales tomorrow, just look at the weather in Waterford in Ireland, because 3/4 of the year, what Waterford has today will be your weather tomorrow. Right. It's as simple as that.
Okay. I mean, that's an interesting look on it, I suppose. There's we've mentioned jet streams there, obviously, and obviously turbulence is part of that, from what I understand. So, what does the turbulence actually do to the aircraft physically when you're flying it? Because I mean, we've all seen the horrific pictures, if you like, of people being thrown out of their seat because they didn't wear the seatbelt when told to, etc., etc. I mean, is there any risk to the aircraft as a result of that turbulence?
Truthfully, the aircraft are designed to withstand severe turbulence. Now, the cases where people have been injured in severe turbulence encounters, they're as a result of, you say, not wearing their seatbelt or just encountering unexpected severe turbulence. And in all those cases, the aircraft survives because it's tested to a far greater G loading than you and I can sustain and a comfort level. So one of the aspects that frequently comes up when I'm talking to people is people talk about, air bubbles and air pockets. Well, as Dan mentioned earlier, the air is a fluid. It's difficult for a lot of people to think about it, but the air is, very similar to water. So if you have turbulent water, then you get, sort of bubbles within it, but they disappear. So we can't have voids within the air. So when people talk about, suddenly, we fell thousands of feet in turbulence. Well, no, you didn't. The difficulty is, and we've talked a little bit about this on a personal level, is that when we're sat on an aeroplane, we don't have any real easy way of judging height changes, if you like. There's no datum, so we're strapped to something that's moving very quickly through the air. So even a change of 1 or 2 feet is relatively significant. So if I was to strap you to an office chair and lift you up and down 1 or 2 feet, it's quite noticeable to you.
Yes,
and that's all the aircraft. That's all the aircraft is experiencing. It's very, very unusual for us to have anything more than 20 feet of altitude change in the majority of turbulence. When we get into severe turbulence, and I've been flying for over 25 years, 14,000 hours. I've only encountered severe turbulence twice. Both occasions were short-lived. No significant injuries, lots of spilt wine, the occasional spilt curry, that's the end result. And they were variations in altitude of about 50 or 60 feet. It's just that people's perception as a human being, we've got very good motion detectors, so we can detect if we're being moved up and down a couple of feet. And, we're not used to being moved in that sense. So we are quite sensitive to it. So the aeroplanes are absolutely fine in turbulence. There are 2 people sat at the front of the aeroplane who will want to be out of that turbulence as much as you do.
Indeed. Well, that sounds like a perfect place to bring that subject to a close. Thank you, Captain Al. Thank you, Dan Holley. There we are. Well, I enjoyed that. Thank you, Dan, for joining me and Captain Al with our with that turbulence. It's one of those things I never really knew anything about. The word jet stream gets used an awful lot when we're talking about weather. It has to be said. Oh dear.
Do you know what, Matt? I was thinking that because listening to that, because we had a pre-listen to that earlier on today, and when you, especially in the UK here, we have our weather presenters who do the weather shows and stuff. Is it just me, or Dan has got like the most perfect weather presenting voice that you could ever wish to see or hear on TV, or is it just me? That specific, clear.
It's the clarity, isn't it, that you want really when you're reading stuff like that. He could get away with delivering bad news, and we'd probably still forgive him, wouldn't we? That's the thing. Yeah. He could tell us that there was a tornado coming, and we'd think, oh well, never mind. Yeah, be good. Be nice to hear some more from Dan. I think about. Yeah, well, good news there. We've got a couple of other bits and pieces coming up, and also a little bit of a special, slightly off the topic of aviation, actually, because Dan's a big storm chaser. He's a massive fan of storm chasing, and we did have a chat with him about that. So that's something to look forward to in later episodes.
Can we just go to the chat room? Graham Haley says that he normally loves these segments, but that one was a bit up and down.
Oh, I see what he did there. I do see what he did there. That is...
insert rim shot, Jeff.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. That's just horrendous. Yes. Yes, I don't know what to do with that information.
So we've got some more of those to come then, Matt.
We have indeed, a couple more of those to come. Rich from Sheffield, which I believe is one of your loyal listeners, Jeff, is apologising for missing your show yesterday, by the way.
It's okay. He'll be punished later.
Right, okay. He'll enjoy that, no doubt. Never mind. Oh, well, never mind. As I said, we're having to sort of pass on our apologies now for somebody else's show. Never mind. Oh, well. Any complaints, obviously, I am annoyed at apg.com, obviously.
Yep. They'll come right to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should see some of these really interesting email addresses I get. Sometimes there are a couple different lines.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's award-winning news. I suppose we better start. Actually, if anybody wants to follow Dan Holley, by the way, it is on Twitter. He is at Dan Holley, HOLLEY _ at Dan Holley _ for anybody who wants to follow him. But while we're talking about social medias, Carlos, where can they find us?
We are over on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Search social media for Plain Talking UK. Also, don't forget that all-important WhatsApp number. If you do want to send us a picture, we can put that on the screen behind Matt in the PT UK studios.
Oh, yeah. Actually, the picture behind me was sent by Jonathan Warner, as you might expect, which is a beautiful picture, look, of the
Osprey.
The Osprey in sunset.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah, absolutely.
Very nice. So that all-important WhatsApp number, remember, pen and paper handy, +44 757 22 491 66. And also, very funny.
Sorry,
John.
John's just said in our ear, can you do that without looking? I can look. I'm going to look right at the camera. So it's +44 757 22 491 66. There you are. See.
And also,
see you on the camera, though.
Also, if you want to, he's got a massive letters in front of him. Anyway, if you want to go to email, you can send us an email, podcast@plaintalkinguk.com, and also our website, allthews.plaintalkinguk.com. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you will also get notifications when we go live, which you can help share and shape the conversation by joining us in the chat room. So go over to youtube.com and search for Plain Talking UK. Also, don't forget that all-important Amazon link, which I have really used the heck out of this week, including Gemma, who ordered some pink balloons last night using the link.
Right.
Kind of random. But take yourselves over to... I have no idea. I don't want to ask.
Okay. Probably best not to. Yeah. Okay.
So take yourselves over to our website. The Amazon link's there. We'll get a small referral fee if you purchase something through there. And also, if you want to go over to the website, check out our Patreon links if you want to become a patron of the show and help to bring the content to you each week from us here.
We're talking about apologies. Actually, we've just had an apology from Dr. Steph. She's just sent us a picture. She says, "Terribly sorry, guys. I'm still working." Look, there we are. She's in full mode. Look, important cup of beverage. Look in the hand. That's the most important thing. We mentioned the word APG there, Jeff. How if somebody's stuck under a stone and doesn't know what on earth APG is all about, how do they find you and what's it all about?
What?
WAPG.
It's the airline pilot guy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally hit that sounder.
Right.
My bad. It's at AP. Well, the website's at airlinepilotguy.com. On Twitter, you can find the crew at APG Crew and at Airline Pilot Guy.
And a quick note from the chat room from Auntie Liz, just saying, great show, guys. Very adequate, Jeff. Get
Thank
back
you.
to editing yesterday's show.
Right,
Yes, ma'am.
You have officially been told off. That is true.
She knows what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right. Oh dear, that's the trouble. When I have a similar problem when I'll accidentally post something on social media, and then our producer John is going, "Excuse me, you're supposed to be doing something else." So it's there we go.
So quick round robin before we finish the show. Then Matt, what's going on in the world of Matt next week?
Not a lot. Same old. Really, it's I had the interesting job of being guru today for my new job.
You've been meditating?
No, sadly not. No. Guru means basically like I've been answering other people's questions, which, having only been with the company for 6 weeks, is quite a challenge. I have to say, it's been a tough old day, but it's been a lot of fun actually. So enjoying it actually. And actually, believe it or not, in September, the first week of September, I'm going to be driving a bus again. Coach. Sorry, I said the word bus.
You said bus.
I know, coach. I'm in so much
Edit that
trouble.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll fix that in post. It'll be fine. So looking forward to doing a bit of coach driving again. Actually, it's going to be good fun. I've missed it. Actually, I've really missed it.
So Nev, what are you doing next week? I'm drinking wine.
Right.
Oh,
okay.
Well done, Nev. Thank you.
Okay.
Armando, what are you doing next week? I'm flying a plane.
Right.
Well done, Armando. Thank you. And Captain
Once
Jeff.
again, any complaints, obviously, please do send them. I am offended at airlinepilotguy.com, I think, on this occasion. I don't want them.
Jeff, send all the mail to me. Come on. That's low.
What's going on?
I know why you guys had me on the show.
What's going on in the world of Jeff next week?
Well, Dr. Steph and I are going to be flying with Colonel Jeff on one of his last flights ever next Friday. So stay tuned for that.
That sounds very exciting. We'll stay tuned for that, definitely. Can't wait for that.
So that is where we bring episode 322. Sorry, that's the beer talking. 322 of the show. I know, John. Honestly, I've had 3 of these now. So a big thanks to everyone who's joined us in the YouTube chat room tonight, all the family members in there. And don't forget as well, a big thanks to everyone who downloads the show as an audio podcast. Big thanks to you all as well. So from me here in my own P2UK small little studio, and from Matt over in the large grand master P2UK studios, and from Jeff over in his fantastic APG studio,
Studio 1A, right?
Not forgetting as well, from John in his production lab. Take care, everyone.
Lab. Wow, okay.
Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend and stay safe, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.